Oh, hello. You might be wondering why there's an empty spot behind me in my bookshelf. Well, the truth is that is supposed to represent the hole in my heart that I have after reading Six of Crows. So I am here today to talk to you about what I think makes Six of Crows so much better than Shadow and Bone. Keep in mind that I have not yet read Crooked Kingdom. I am planning on doing so in the next month or so. So this is just based on my thoughts on Six of Crows so far. I think the first thing that makes one series way better than the other is the writing style. I know they were only written a few years apart, but the writing in Shadow and Bone just feels a lot more elementary than that in Six of Crows. Not saying that it's bad, but where Six of Crows really delivered in its execution of, writing about the heist and describing what Ketterdam is like, Shadow and Bone doesn't really give a lot of those descriptive elements. I think that the writing leaves a lot to be desired and leaves the reader to fill in the gaps and holes in their knowledge with what they imagine a scene or a character looks like. This writing style also affected the way that the characters were portrayed to me. Let's compare the Darkling and Kaz, for instance. So when I was reading Shadow and Bone, I was really looking forward to meeting the Darkling as a character because I had heard so much about him and because I know people in general really like him as a character. After reading the book, I did think that the Darkling's character fell a little flat and that he just came across as a little bit one-dimensional. He felt like he was portraying an idea rather than really being this, human being. What, is he a human being? Maybe not. Either way, it feels like he was really just in the story to portray an idea or an antagonistic force against Alina rather than an actual character with feelings and emotions and a really complex backstory. I think it's fair to compare the Darkling and the Shadow and Bone trilogy to Kaz and the Six of Crows duology. So Kaz comes off as more of a complex and morally gray character, and this is in large part due to the work with which the author introduced him and the effort she put in developing a really solid backstory for Kaz. There's a lot of trauma that serves as a foundation for who his character is when we meet him in Six of Crows, and this shows in the writing, this shows in the way Kaz speaks and thinks, and I really appreciate that. So as a bad character or someone who's morally gray, I really felt like Kaz was more likable and sincere of a character than the Darkling was. I also really like the way that the story unfolds in Six of Crows better than it does in Shadow and Bone. I think in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, it's told just fine. It just feels a little bit linear and predictable. Not necessarily a bad thing, but as a reader, it doesn't really excite you. In contrast, in Six of Crows, I think that the reader's experience really mirrors the heist plot in the book, where the result is readers often feel tricked alongside the other characters in the story. I think that as a reader that left me on the tips of my toes. I never knew what to expect or something totally different happened than I had expected. So overall, it felt like I was more involved in the story and in the fates and outcomes of each of the characters in this book. Something else that I really appreciate about Six of Crows are the themes that come across in this book. I feel like the themes in the trilogy are pretty straightforward. Hero's journey, dark versus light, best friends, Mal and Alina, who then, blossom that friendship into something more. Retroactive spoiler alert. But I think that the themes in Six of Crows are a little bit more mature. For instance, instead of having a duo like Mal and Alina, you have one like Kaz and Inej. Obviously, the author is implying that there's some sort of mutual attraction there, but I think what makes their dynamic really interesting is you have so many opposites, right? So on the one hand, you have Inej, who is determined to be free of Ketterdam and everything that ties her to it, whereas Kaz is deliberately keeping himself chained in the past by having this determined, vengeful nature directed at Pekka Rollins. Another element of their relationship that I think serves to give it a lot of good depth is Inej's connection with the menagerie and the masks and things like that, compared to Kaz always having a mask on to hide this person who he is beneath or all this trauma that he has been through. One thing Six of Crows definitely did that Shadow and Bone didn't really explore was presenting all these characters who used their histories and their backstories to propel them forward, to use their traumas as strengths and channel that into, their output of behavior and strengths and things like that. I'm not saying that every character has to have a traumatic backstory to make one book superior to another, but I did appreciate the added element that it brought to all the characters in this book. So overall, I think if somebody asked me their opinions on which series I would recommend, I would definitely say Six of Crows, but I would agree with reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy beforehand to get the backstory about that world and have some context for what's going on in Ketterdam. And I'm really excited to read Crooked Kingdom. I don't know if I'm emotionally ready yet, but I'm excited. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!